Hi, everybody. Before we start the story, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is. If you do that, YouTube will keep showing you more stories like this one. Okay, let's start now. The lights weren't supposed to move like that. I'd been photographing the Marfa lights for National Geographic for 3 weeks, and they always stayed near Mitchell Flat, hovering between the earth and sky like they had for over a century. But on March 19th, 2023, at exactly 11:47 p.m., one of them detached from the others and drifted toward my truck. I should have left immediately. Every instinct screamed at me to start the engine and drive back to the motel in Alpine. Instead, I grabbed my camera, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The light was orange, pulsing with a rhythm that felt almost biological, a heartbeat rendered in photons. It moved with purpose, not like the random dancing of the other lights, but with the deliberate motion of something that had noticed me noticing it. My camera's autofocus refused to lock on. The light was 20 feet away now, and I could feel heat radiating from it. Unseasonable warmth that made sweat bead on my forehead despite the 50-degree desert night. Through the viewfinder, the light appeared to have depth, layers of luminescence folded into itself like origami made of fire, and in the center, barely visible, something darker, a shape, almost human. The light stopped 10 feet from my truck's hood. I lowered the camera, my professional curiosity evaporating into something more primal. Fear, the kind that makes your mouth taste like copper and turns your legs to water. The shape inside the light was moving now, pressing against the luminescence like someone pushing against a membrane from the inside. Then, my radio crackled to life. I hadn't turned it on. Static poured from the speakers, so loud I lunged to turn it down. But beneath the white noise, I heard something else. Breathing. Wet, labored breathing that synchronized perfectly with the light's pulsing rhythm. And then a voice, distorted and wrong, speaking in backwards Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but I recognized it was reversed because I'd done audio editing for years. My brain tried to unreverse it automatically, caught fragments. Venir conmigo. Llevar. Casa. Come with me. Bring home. The light touched my truck. Where it made contact, the metal didn't heat up or burn. It changed. The red paint drained of color, turning gray, then white, then translucent. I could see through my own hood, see the engine beneath, but the engine was wrong. The parts were moving in reverse, pistons pulling back instead of pushing forward, belts running counterclockwise. And they were organic now, pulsing like organs, slick with something that looked like amniotic fluid. I threw the truck in reverse and floored it. The tires screamed against the Kalish road, kicking up a dust cloud that glowed orange in the light's radiance. But when I checked the rearview mirror, the light was keeping pace, matching my speed exactly, staying 20 feet behind me. And now I could see inside it clearly. There was a man in there, or what used to be a man. His body was elongated, stretched vertically like taffy, his limbs too long and bent at too many joints. His face was the worst part, perfectly normal, perfectly human, frozen in an expression of mild curiosity. He was wearing clothes from another era, maybe the 1940s, a work shirt and dungarees. And he was looking directly at me through 60 years of desert mystery and quantum impossibility. I drove for 15 minutes at 80 miles per hour before I realized I wasn't getting closer to Alpine. The odometer was climbing, the engine was roaring, but the landscape wasn't changing. I passed the same dead mesquite tree 7 times, the same cattle guard, the same mile marker, 47. Over and over, like a scratched record, like reality had gotten stuck in a loop and I was trapped in the groove. The light was closer now. 15 feet, The backwards breathing on the radio had been joined by other voices, a chorus of reversed Spanish, reversed English, reversed languages I couldn't identify. My phone showed no signal, no GPS coordinates, just my wallpaper photo and the time, 11:47 p.m. It had been 11:47 p.m. for 16 minutes. I slammed the brakes. Dust engulfed the truck, and in that cloud of caliche and creosote, the light surrounded me completely. Orange luminescence poured through the windows, through the metal, through me. I felt it in my chest cavity, felt it wrapping around my heart, my lung, felt it examining my organs with the casual interest of a child poking at an insect. The heat was inside me now, and with it came thoughts that weren't mine. I saw Marfa from above, saw the lights dancing in their eternal vigil, saw decades scrolling past in seconds. I saw what the lights were. I can't explain it. I don't have the physics or the vocabulary, but they were holes. Holes punched through from somewhere else, somewhere adjacent to our reality, and things lived in those holes. Things that used to be people. People who'd gotten too close. People who'd been curious like me. People who were now stretched across dimensions, like specimens on slides, still conscious, still aware, still screaming in reversed voices that no one could understand. The stretched man pressed his face against the inside of the light, so close I could see the pores in his skin, see the individual hairs of his eyebrows. His mouth moved, and this time the radio translated clearly, no longer backwards. "Welcome home, photographer. We've been waiting. We've been calling. You're the first one who stayed long enough." My truck's metal was fully translucent now. I could see the desert floor beneath me, could see the sand and rock through my own legs, through my own hands. I was becoming like him, like them, whatever they were. The light was unmaking me, disassembling my particles and reassembling them in a configuration that could exist in their realm. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the St. Christopher medal my grandmother had given me. I'm not religious, hadn't thought about it in years, and I pressed it against my chest, and I prayed. Not to God, not to Jesus, but to the desert itself. To Texas, to the ancient, hard, unforgiving land that had been here long before the lights and would be here long after. I prayed in English and Spanish, and in no language at all, just desperate need crystallized into intention. The light recoiled, just for a second, just a flicker. But it was enough. The translucency of my truck solidified slightly. The radio static lessened. I could see mile marker 47 ahead, but beyond it, finally, mile marker 48. The loop was breaking. I drove. I didn't look at the rearview mirror, didn't check if the light was following, just pushed the truck to its limit while reciting every prayer I could remember and several I invented on the spot. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head, her stories about la luz mala, evil lights that lured travelers to their deaths in the desert. She'd been from Chihuahua, had grown up with stories about lights that were really spirits, really demons, really something worse. When I finally saw the lights of Alpine at 1:37 a.m., I sobbed. Real time had reasserted itself. I was back in the world. But when I looked at my hands on the steering wheel, they were different. Translucent at the edges, just slightly, like I was a watercolor painting someone had started to erase. And they stayed that way. I went to the emergency room. The doctors found nothing wrong, ran every test, declared me healthy despite my hands being faintly see-through. They suggested stress, dehydration, psychological evaluation. I showed them my photographs from that night. Every single image was blank except one. The last photo I'd taken showed the light, showed the stretched man inside it, showed him clearly. But in the background, there were others. Dozens of them, hundreds. All stretched, all trapped, all pressed against their individual lights like prisoners against cell windows. And in the very back, barely visible, a figure that looked like me, already waiting, already stretched, already screaming silently in reversed words. I returned to my motel and found a message written on the bathroom mirror in condensation, even though the room was bone dry. Gracias por visitarnos. Thank you for visiting us. The letters dripped upward instead of down. I left Texas that night, drove straight to New Mexico without stopping. But it didn't matter, because now, sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I can see the orange glow at the edge of my vision, and I can feel myself stretching. My fingers are too long now. My arms have an extra joint that wasn't there before. It's subtle. Most people don't notice, but I do. I feel it happening slowly, feel myself being pulled inch by inch into that place between realities. The worst part isn't the physical changes. It's that I understand them now. I hear their reversed voices clearly, and I know what they're saying. They're teaching me the language of that place, preparing me for when the transition completes. They tell me it doesn't hurt after the first few years. They tell me consciousness expands in interesting ways when you exist in 4 dimensions simultaneously. They tell me I'll learn to love the stretching, the way they have. Last week, I woke up floating 6 inches above my bed. This week, my reflection in mirrors lags 2 seconds behind my movements. Next week, who knows? But I know eventually I'll stop being here entirely. I'll be back there at mile marker 47, suspended in orange light, pressed against the membrane between worlds, watching as the next curious photographer stops to document the famous Marfa lights. And when they do, I'll be the one saying, "Welcome home," in a voice that plays backwards through their radio. I'll be the one showing them what happens to people who look too long at mysteries that were never meant to be solved. I'll be the one who helps them understand that some lights in the Texas desert aren't natural phenomena, or swamp gas, or atmospheric reflections. They're warnings. And I didn't listen. My hands are almost completely transparent now. I can see the bones, see the blood moving through vessels that exist in 2 places at once. I've stopped going outside during the day because sunlight passes through me in ways that cast impossible shadows, shadows that move on their own, shadows that reach toward the west where Marfa wait. I'm writing this while I still can, while my fingers can still hold a pen, while I still have enough solid matter to interact with paper. I want someone to know. I want someone to understand. If you're reading this, if you're thinking about visiting Marfa to see the lights, don't. And if you do, don't stay longer than a few minutes. Don't let them notice you noticing them. Because once they see you seeing them, once they recognize that you're curious enough to stop and watch and wonder, they'll follow you home. Just like they followed me. Just like they're following you now, if you've read this far. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pass it on, but that's how it works. Attention is a 2-way street. By reading about them, you've looked in their direction. And now they're looking back. Check your hands. Are they as solid as they were when you started reading? Check your reflection. Does it move exactly when you do? Listen carefully to the silence around you. Do you hear breathing that isn't yours? I hope you do, because misery loves company, and it's lonely here, halfway between Texas and somewhere else, waiting for the day when I finally cross over completely and join the others in their orange prison, stretched and timeless and screaming in reverse. The light is in my bedroom now. I can see it reflected in my laptop screen. It's been waiting patiently for 3 months, growing brighter each night. Tonight, I think, is the night. I can feel the pull now, strong and inevitable, like gravity but sideways, like I'm falling into a direction that doesn't exist. The stretched man is smiling. They all are. "Welcome home," they say. "We've been waiting. We've missed you. You're one of us now." And God help me, I'm starting to believe they're right. Story 2. The thing in the Houston Bayou. The water in Buffalo Bayou shouldn't have been glowing. I'd worked for Houston Parks and Recreation for 11 years, had cleared debris from that muddy water 1,000 times, and it had never done anything but flow brown and sluggish through the heart of the city. But on August 3rd, 2022, at 4:17 a.m., it was glowing pale green, and something was moving underneath. I'd gotten the call at 3:30. Homeless encampment reported unusual activity near Allen Parkway. Possible hazmat situation. Bring the boat and survey for dead fish or chemical spills. Standard protocol. I'd grabbed my partner, Marcus Chen, and we'd launched the Boston whaler into the bayou just as the first hints of dawn started graying the eastern sky. Marcus saw the glow first. Jesus Christ, Tommy. Tell me that's just algae bloom. It wasn't algae. Algae didn't pulse. Algae didn't move in patterns that resembled veins spreading through the water like a luminescent circulatory system. And algae definitely didn't make the water feel thick, viscous, like we were pushing through something between liquid and gel. I killed the engine. Big mistake. In the sudden silence, we heard it, a sound rising from beneath the bayou's surface, a wet clicking noise, rhythmic and wrong, like someone snapping their fingers underwater, but with too many fingers snapping at once. Dozens of fingers. Hundreds. We should call this in, Marcus said. His voice had gone tight, the way it got when he was trying very hard not to panic. This is way above our pay grade. I agreed, reached for the radio. That's when the boat lurched. Something had bumped us from below, something massive enough to rock a 20-foot whaler like it was a toy. The green glow intensified, bright enough now that I could see Marcus's face clearly in the pre-dawn darkness, see the fear there that mirrored my own. The clicking stopped. In its place came a new sound, breathing. Massive, labored breathing. The sound of lungs the size of oil drums pulling in air they shouldn't need because they were underwater. And then, slowly, something began to rise. It broke the surface, 15 feet from our boat. At first, I thought it was a log, or maybe a dead alligator. Sometimes they drifted up from the Trinity, got lost in the bayou system. But logs don't have eyes, and alligators don't have hands. It had 12 arms radiating from a central body, each arm easily 20 feet long, pale and bloated like a drowned corpse, but moving with liquid grace. The hands at the ends of those arms were almost human. 5 fingers each, but the fingers were too long, the joints bending backward, the nails black and curved like talons. The body itself was amorphous, shifting, like it couldn't decide what shape it wanted to be. One moment, it looked almost human, torso and head. The next, it was just a mass of tissue studded with organs that had no business being visible. But the eyes, God, the eyes were the worst. It had 7 of them, scattered across what I suppose was its head, all different sizes, all fully human. They weren't the flat black eyes of a deep-sea creature or the yellow slits of a predator. They were human eyes, complete with whites and irises. 1 blue, 2 brown, 3 green, 1 hazel. And they blinked out of sync with each other, looked in different directions, studied us with an intelligence that made my skin crawl. Marcus started screaming. Not words, just a raw sound of existential horror, the noise a human makes when their brain can't process what their senses are reporting. He lunged for the engine pull cord, but one of those arms shot out faster than anything that size should move and grabbed his wrist. The touch did something to him. His scream cut off mid-breath, and his eyes went wide, so wide I could see white all around the irises. His mouth moved silently, and then he spoke in a voice that wasn't his, deeper, resonant, with an accent I couldn't place. The bayou has been here longer than your city. The bayou will be here longer than your species. Why do you float on our skin? Why do you poison our blood? It wasn't Marcus asking. The thing was using him like a puppet, moving his mouth, borrowing his vocal cords. I watched in frozen horror as Marcus's free hand moved to his throat and began to squeeze. The thing was making him strangle himself. I grabbed the oar and swung it at the arm holding Marcus. The oar connected with a wet smack, and I immediately wished I hadn't touched it. The flesh was cold, impossibly cold, cold enough that my hand stuck to the oar when I tried to let go, and I felt something travel up the wood into my palms, not electricity, but something like it, information pouring into me like someone dumping ice water into my skull. I saw the bayou's history, saw it before Houston, before Texas, before humans, saw it as a living thing, ancient and patient, its waters flowing through geological epochs, witnessing the rise and fall of species we've never dug up, never catalogued. And I saw what lived in it. Not dinosaurs or prehistoric fish, but something else, something that had been here the entire time, existing in the water itself, woven into its molecular structure. The bayou was conscious. The bayou was alive, and we'd been poisoning it for 200 years. The thing released Marcus, and he collapsed into the bottom of the boat, gasping, his neck already bruising. 2 more arms emerged from the water, then 3 more, until the bayou around us was a forest of pale, reaching limbs. They didn't attack, they just surrounded us, swaying gently like kelp in a current, those human hands at the ends opening and closing rhythmically. The largest eye, the blue one, focused on me. When it blinked, I felt it in my chest, felt my own heart skip a beat in sympathy. The thing's mouth opened. I hadn't realized it had a mouth until it opened, the flesh just splitting apart to reveal darkness and teeth that looked like they'd been pulled from 100 different species and arranged in concentric circles. It spoke directly this time, its voice bubbling up from the water, from the boat, from the air itself. You will tell them what lives here. Tell them the bayou is not theirs to poison, not theirs to contain in concrete, not theirs to forget. Tell them we are tired of sleeping. Tell them we are hungry. Tell them we are coming up. One of the arms moved toward me, and I scrambled backward, nearly capsizing the boat. But it didn't grab me. Instead, it pointed past me, toward the downtown skyline, just becoming visible in the growing dawn. The finger, those 2 long, backward-bending fingers, traced the outline of the buildings against the sky, and everywhere it pointed, I saw green luminescence appear in the air, saw the glow spreading like watercolor, bleeding across wet paper. Your city is built on our body, the thing continued. Every foundation, every basement, every tunnel and sewer and pipe, all of it penetrating our skin, all of it drawing our blood. For 2 centuries you have taken and taken and taken, and now the equation must balance. Now we take back. The arms began to sink, sliding back beneath the surface with barely a ripple. But before the last one disappeared, it touched the side of our boat, and where it made contact, the metal began to corrode. Not rust, corrode, dissolving like sugar in water, the aluminum turning soft and porous, holes appearing and spreading. You have 72 hours, the thing said, its voice fading as it descended into the murk. Tell them, or we will tell them ourselves, and our language is flood and dissolution, and the reclamation of every molecule you stole from us. Then it was gone. The green glow faded. The bayou returned to its normal brown sluggishness. Marcus was sobbing in the fetal position, his hands pressed to his throat, and our boat was sinking, water pouring through the spreading holes in its hull. We made it to shore with minutes to spare, dragging ourselves up the muddy bank near the Sabine Street Bridge. Behind us, the whaler settled into the bayou with a sad gurgle, its hull dissolving like wet cardboard. By the time we'd crawled 20 feet inland, there was nothing left but bubbles. I called it in, tried to explain. The dispatcher thought I was having a stroke or a psychotic break, told me to stay put, sent an ambulance. The EMTs found us covered in bayou mud, Marcus non-responsive and traumatized, me babbling about pale arms and human eyes and living water. They sedated us both. At the hospital, they ran toxicology screens, checked for hallucinogens, questioned us separately. Our stories matched too perfectly for fabrication, but they were also too insane for belief. The official report listed it as a shared psychotic episode triggered by toxic algae bloom, possible neurotoxin exposure. They kept us under observation for 48 hours. I was released on August 5th at noon, 36 hours left of the 72-hour deadline. I tried to warn people, went to the mayor's office, the police, the environmental agencies, showed them my hands, which still had the frostbite-like marks where I'd touched the thing's arm. Told them about the dissolving boat, about the thing in the bayou, about the warning. They were kind but dismissive, suggested counseling, suggested more time off, suggested I'd been working too hard, that the heat and stress and early morning hours had gotten to me. Marcus couldn't corroborate. He hadn't spoken a word since the incident, just sat in his hospital bed staring at nothing, occasionally making that wet clicking sound in his throat. 72 hours after our encounter, on August 6th at 4:17 a.m., the flooding started. But it wasn't rain. The bayou just rose without warning, without precipitation, without any meteorological explanation. The water came up through storm drains, through toilets, through the tiniest cracks in foundations, and it glowed green. All of it. The entire city lit up with that pale, sickly luminescence. I watched from my apartment window as the streets filled. The water moved wrong, flowing uphill, pooling in places it shouldn't, avoiding others completely. It was selective, deliberate. And in the glow, I could see shapes moving. Lots of them. Some with 12 arms, some with more, some with fewer. All with human eyes, all with those terrible, reaching hands. The news called it an unprecedented groundwater surge, a geological anomaly, possible earthquake-related aquifer breach. They told people to evacuate, but the water was faster. It swallowed the first floors of buildings in minutes, and everyone it touched came up changed. Their eyes went blank, their mouths moved in synchronization, and they spoke in that same resonant voice. The bayou remembers. The bayou reclaims. You are made of water. You are made of us. Downtown Houston became a Venice made of nightmare. The water stabilized at 15 feet deep, turning streets into canals, trapping people on upper floors, surrounding the skyscrapers in a glowing green moat. Rescue boats that entered the flood zone stopped responding to radio calls. Later, they'd find them empty, drifting, their hulls soft and porous like wet cardboard. The authorities cordoned off downtown, declared it a disaster zone, a hazmat area, a no-go zone. The water wouldn't recede. Every attempt to pump it out failed. The pumps would run. The water would appear to drain, but it would be back within an hour, as if it had never left. Because it hadn't. It had just sunk back into the aquifer, the bayou, the living circulatory system that ran beneath the city like veins under skin. I'm writing this from San Antonio now, 70 miles from Houston. But it doesn't feel far enough, because I still have the marks on my hands. And sometimes when I take a shower, the water feels thick, viscous, and I see that green glow starting to appear around the edges of the stream. The bayou's network extends far beyond Buffalo Bayou. Every underground waterway in Texas is connected, and the thing down there is spreading, waking up, calling to its brothers and sisters in the Colorado River, the Brazos, the Trinity, the Nueces. Marcus never recovered. 3 days after his release from the hospital, he walked to White Oak Bayou and jumped in. They found his body a week later, bloated and pale, his arms elongated, his fingers too long. The autopsy revealed his lungs were full of water, but not normal water. It was thick, greenish, and under microscopic examination, they found something that looked like cells but wasn't quite. Something between algae and animal tissue, something that was still moving even in the slides, still pulsing with that subtle biological rhythm. They cremated him immediately and classified the findings. But I know the truth. The bayou took him back, reclaimed what it decided belonged to it. And it's only a matter of time before it comes for the rest of us. Houston still stands mostly. The downtown flood zone is permanent now. A surreal water world in the middle of a major city. Tourists come to see it, this freak geological phenomenon, this mysterious green glowing water that refuses to drain. They take pictures, they make jokes. They don't go in the water, though. The city made that illegal after the first dozen disappearances. But at night, if you stand on the edge of the flood zone, you can see them. The things with too many arms, the things with human eyes. They surface sometimes, dozens of them, and they watch the city with those mismatched eyes, and they're patient. So patient. Because they know something we're only beginning to understand. Every city has water under it. Every foundation, every basement, every sewer system. And water remembers. Water is patient. Water is old, beyond our comprehension. And we built our civilizations on top of it, thinking we'd conquered it, controlled it, owned it. We were wrong. Last week, the same green glow appeared in the San Antonio River. Just a faint shimmer at first, barely visible. But it's growing, spreading upstream, getting brighter. And last night, I heard that wet clicking sound coming from my bathroom pipes. I'm leaving Texas, driving to Arizona, somewhere dry, somewhere the ancient waters can't reach. But I know it won't matter, because now when I look at my hands, really look at them in the right light, I can see my veins glowing faintly green. The water I touched, the water that touched me, it's inside me now, part of me, changing me, claiming me. Sometimes I feel extra fingers trying to grow from the edges of my hands. Sometimes I blink and see through too many eyes. Sometimes I speak and my voice has that resonant quality, that accent I can't place, and I'm saying things I don't remember thinking. The bayou isn't just in Houston anymore. The bayou is everywhere water has ever been. The bayou is in the water cycle, in the clouds, in the rain that falls on Denver and New York and Seattle. The bayou is in the pipes that bring water to your home. The bayou is in every glass you drink, every shower you take, every tear you cry. The bayou is patient, the bayou is spreading, the bayou is coming, and there's nowhere dry enough to hide. Story 3. Room 309 at the Driskill Hotel. The room wasn't supposed to exist. I'd been the night auditor at the Driskill Hotel in Austin for 6 years. Knew every hallway, every room number, every quirk of the historic building's layout. Room 308 opened onto the third-floor corridor. Room 310 was across from it. But there was no room 309. Never had been. The wall between them was solid, load-bearing, part of the original 1886 construction. So when I found the key card in the front desk drawer on November 14th, 2023, labeled 309 in handwriting that wasn't digital print, but actual ink, spidery and old-fashioned, I thought it was a prank. Maybe something left over from a murder mystery event, a prop that someone had forgotten to throw away. I should have thrown it away. Should have logged it as found property and moved on with my night shift. But it was 2:37 a.m., the hotel was quiet, and I was curious. Stupid, lethal curiosity that's killed smarter people than me. The third floor was empty. Off-season weeknight, only 30% occupancy, and most guests were on the renovated second floor or the luxury suites on 5. I walked the corridor slowly, checking the walls between 308 and 310. Solid. I knocked on them. Hollow, both sides, but nothing suggested a hidden room. The math worked. Standard room width, standard wall thickness, no missing space. I held up the key card to the wall anyway. Just to see, just to satisfy that curiosity. The lock clicked. I didn't see a door appear. One moment, it was a wall with textured wallpaper. The next moment, it was a door with a digital lock, and the lock's light was green, and the handle was turning under my hand, though I hadn't consciously decided to turn it. The door opened inward, and light spilled out. Warm, yellowish light from bulbs that probably hadn't been manufactured in decades. Room 309 was decorated in a style that predated the rest of the hotel's Victorian aesthetic. It was older, much older. The wallpaper was hand-painted silk, a pattern of roses that moved slightly when I wasn't looking directly at them, petals unfurling and closing like they were breathing. The furniture was heavy dark wood, baroque and ornate, the kind you'd see in a Spanish colonial mansion. And it was occupied. A woman sat in the chair by the window, her back to me, her long dark hair cascading down to her waist. She wore a dress from the 1800s, white lace and elaborate beading, the kind of thing that cost a fortune and took months to make. She was humming something, a lullaby maybe, in a language that sounded like Spanish but older, thicker, with syllables that didn't fit in modern mouths. "Excuse me," I said. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize this room was occupied. There must be a mistake with the reservation system." She stopped humming. Her head tilted slightly, like she'd heard me but was considering whether to acknowledge me. Then she spoke, her voice soft and melodic, and utterly wrong, each word falling slightly out of sync with her lips' movement. "There is no mistake, Daniel. We've been waiting for you." She knew my name. I hadn't told her my name, and she'd said, "we." I was about to ask who else was there when I saw the others. They were standing in the corners of the room, 4 more figures, all women, all wearing similar antique dresses, all with their hair unbound and flowing. I hadn't seen them when I first entered, or they hadn't been there. I couldn't tell which possibility frightened me more. They stood perfectly still. Hands clasped in front of them, faces turned toward me, and their eyes were black. Not dark brown, not shadowed, black, pupil and iris and sclera, all the same lightless void. "Who are you?" My voice came out as a whisper. The air in the room was thick, hard to breathe, like someone had replaced the oxygen with something heavier. The woman in the chair stood and turned to face me. Her eyes were black too, but unlike the others, she was smiling. "We are the ones who built this place. We are the blood in the foundation. We are the secrets buried in the walls, and you, Daniel, you are tonight's witness." She glided toward me. I don't know how else to describe it. Her feet weren't touching the floor. She was moving like she was mounted on invisible tracks. "Do you know the history of this land? Before the hotel, before Austin, before Texas was Texas? Do you know about the mission that stood here? Do you know about the pestilence, the desperation, the bargain that was struck?" I backed toward the door. My hand found the handle, turned it. The door didn't open. The lock clicked repeatedly, green light flashing, but the door stayed shut, sealed as if welded into the frame. "They were dying," the woman continued. 1753. Smallpox swept through the mission, killed half the settlement in 6 weeks. The priests prayed. God did not answer, so they prayed to something else, something older, something that had been here before the Spanish, before the Tonkawa, before humans walked upright. And it answered. The other 4 women moved now, drifting away from the corners, forming a loose circle around me. Their movements were synchronized, inhuman, like puppets controlled by the same strings, and now I could see that their dresses weren't just antique. They were rotting, silk disintegrating into cobwebs, lace browning with age, and something darker. Bloodstains, old brown, persistent bloodstains that covered their torsos, their sleeves, their skirts. The bargain was simple, the first woman said. She was close now, close enough that I could smell her. Roses and earth and decay, the scent of something that had been buried and recently unearthed. The entity would spare the settlement. The pestilence would end, but payment was required. 5 women, willing sacrifices, their blood mixed into the foundation stones of the mission's new wing, their spirits bound to the location in perpetuity, serving as anchors for the entity's presence in this world. She reached out and touched my face. Her fingers were ice cold and impossibly smooth, like porcelain. We have been here for 270 years. Daniel. Watching, waiting, maintaining the bargain. The mission fell, the hotel rose, the city grew around us. But we remain, and every few decades, the entity hungers. Requires tribute, requires a witness to carry the story forward, to ensure the fear persists, because fear is how it feeds. I tried to speak, couldn't. Her touch had paralyzed something in me, not my muscles, but my will. I could move, but I couldn't make myself want to move. My thoughts were sluggish, wrapped in cotton, drifting away before I could complete them. Tonight, someone will die in this hotel, she said. Someone always dies when room 309 opens. That is the nature of the bargain. The entity takes payment, and we facilitate. We are the mechanism. We are the knife. And you, Daniel, you will watch, and you will remember, and you will tell others, and their fear will sustain the entity for another cycle. The room's walls began to change. The wallpaper peeled away in long strips, revealing the original mission walls beneath. Rough stone, mud mortar, and things embedded in the mortar. Bones, small ones, animal maybe, or maybe not. And scratched into the stones were symbols, spiraling glyphs that hurt to look at, that seemed to crawl across the surface like living things. The window showed downtown Austin, but wrong. The buildings were there, but they were different ages all at once. I could see the Frostbank Tower as it appeared today, but also as empty construction framing, but also as nothing, just sky, all 3 versions occupying the same space, time overlapping itself in ways that made my eyes water and my brain ache. He's on the 4th floor, one of the other women said. Her voice was identical to the first woman's, like they were speaking with the same mouth, the same vocal cords worn by 5 different throats. Room 427, Gerald Hutchinson, 47, married, 2 children, in Austin for a pharmaceutical conference. He has a weak heart. This will be easy. I wanted to scream a warning, wanted to call 911, wanted to run to room 427 and wake this Gerald Hutchinson and tell him to leave immediately. But I couldn't move. The paralysis had spread, and now I was just an observer in my own body, a passenger with no control, forced to watch as events unfolded with the inevitability of a recording. The 5 women joined hands, forming a circle with me at the center. They began to chant in that old Spanish but not language, voices rising and falling in harmonic patterns that resonated in my chest, in my skull, in my teeth. The room darkened, the furniture faded, the walls became translucent, and I could see through them into the hotel's other rooms, see the sleeping guests in their beds, see the cleaning staff in the service corridors, see the security guard in the basement watching monitors that showed everything except room 309, which didn't exist on his cameras because it didn't exist anywhere except when it needed to. And I saw room 427, saw Gerald Hutchinson sleeping peacefully, his CPAP machine humming, his phone charging on the nightstand. I saw the darkness gather in the corner of his room, saw it coalesce into a shape that wasn't quite human, all wrong angles and too many limbs. I saw it approach his bed with the inevitability of sunrise. I tried to close my eyes. Couldn't. The women's chant had frozen me with my eyes open, and I was forced to watch as the entity, the thing they'd bargained with, the thing they'd bound themselves to, reached into Gerald Hutchinson's chest and did something to his heart. Not squeezed it, not stopped it, changed it, corrupted it. I watched his cardiac tissue transform, cells dying and regenerating wrong, the muscle fibers twisting into patterns that couldn't sustain life. He woke up. Only for a moment. His eyes opened wide, and he saw the thing standing over him, and the look on his face was beyond terror. It was comprehension, understanding. He saw what I was seeing, saw the truth beneath reality, saw the thing that had been living in Austin's foundation since 1753. And that knowledge killed him as surely as the heart attack. His monitor flatlined at 3:41 a.m. The hotel's AD alarm activated automatically. Staff would respond in minutes, would try to resuscitate him, would fail, would call the paramedics, would list it as natural causes. Tragic, but not suspicious. Just another business traveler whose heart gave out far from home. The chanting stopped. The women released each other's hands. The room brightened, walls solidifying, furniture reappearing, the view from the window returning to normal, just downtown Austin at night, beautiful and alive, and hiding horrors that have been here longer than its buildings. "Now you know," the first woman said. "Now you carry the story. Tell it or don't tell it. Believe it or convince yourself it was a dream. It doesn't matter. The fear is already in you. The knowledge is already a seed in your mind, and it will grow, and it will spread, and others will feel it, and the entity will feed." The door clicked open behind me. The paralysis released all at once, and I stumbled backward into the corridor, my legs weak, my heart hammering. I turned back to look at room 309, but there was only a wall, solid, unchanging. The key card in my pocket was gone. My hand was empty. I went downstairs in a daze. 45 minutes later, the call came through from the fourth floor. Guest unresponsive in 427. I followed protocol, called 911, directed the paramedics up, filed the incident report. Massive cardiac event, no suspicious circumstances. Family notified. Body removed to morgue. Room cleaned and prepared for the next guest. Just another night at the Driskill Hotel. I worked the rest of my shift, smiled at early checkout guests, processed charges, acted normal while my brain screamed that nothing would ever be normal again. I went home at 7 a.m. as dawn broke over Austin, pink and gold and beautiful, and I sat in my apartment and tried to convince myself it had been a hallucination, a waking dream, a psychotic break brought on by too many night shifts. But I can't convince myself, because things are different now. I see them now, the little glitches in reality, the moments when the world shows its seams, the way shadows fall wrong sometimes in the hotel's lobby, the way certain guests look at certain walls with expressions of puzzlement, like they're hearing a song no one else can hear. The way room 308 and room 310's occupants sometimes complain about singing, about women's voices chanting in a foreign language, about cold spots and the smell of roses and earth. And I have dreams. Every night since November 14th, I dream about room 309, about the 5 women in their rotting dresses, about the entity in the corner of Gerald Hutchinson's room. But in the dreams, I'm the one in the bed, and the entity is reaching into my chest, and I wake up with my heart racing and pain radiating down my left arm. I went to a cardiologist. He found nothing wrong. Perfect heart health, he said. You'll live to be 100, he said. But he was wrong, because I know the truth. The entity marked me that night. I'm not a witness. I'm not a story carrier. I'm the next payment. I quit the Driskill 2 weeks ago, moved to San Marcos, 30 miles away. Thought distance might help. It didn't, because last night I found a key card slipped under my apartment door, labeled 309 in that same spidery handwriting. And when I looked out my window, I could see a building that wasn't there before, couldn't be there. A hotel that looked like the Driskill, but wasn't, existing in the empty lot across the street, translucent and shimmering like a heat mirage. Room 309 isn't a place, it's a mechanism, a door that opens anywhere the entity needs it to open. A room that exists wherever the bargain needs to be fulfilled. And now it's here, in San Marcos, following me, waiting. Tonight, I'll die. I know this with the certainty of prophecy. The 5 women will come. The entity will reach into my chest and transform my heart into something that can't sustain life, and someone else will watch, will be forced to witness, will carry the story forward. Maybe you. Maybe whoever reads this, because that's how it works. Attention is a vector. Knowledge is contagion. By reading this, by learning about Room 309, you've opened a door in your mind. And the entity can smell open doors. Check your pockets. Check your bag. Check your mailbox. Is there a keycard there, labeled with a room number that shouldn't exist? Can you hear chanting in a language you don't recognize? Can you smell roses and earth? I can hear them now. The 5 women. They're singing in my bedroom, on the other side of the door. The lock is clicking green. The door is opening. And I'm paralyzed again, frozen with my laptop open, typing these last words while my body refuses to run. The entity is here. I can see it reflected in my screen, standing behind me, all wrong angles and too many limbs. It's reaching for my chest. It's reaching in. It doesn't hurt like I thought it would. It's cold. So cold. My heart is changing. I can feel it twisting, corrupting, learning to beat in patterns that can't sustain life, but can sustain something else. Something the entity needs. Some rhythm that feeds it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I told you. I'm sorry I wrote this down. But I couldn't die without warning someone. Even if the warning is also a curse. Even if by reading this, you're next. Room 309 is everywhere now. Room 309 is coming for you. And when you find the key card, when you hear the women singing, when you see the entity reaching, remember me. Remember Gerald Hutchinson. Remember all of us who learned too late that some hotel rooms exist only to collect the payment for bargains struck centuries ago. The entity is inside my chest now. My heart is beating wrong. The women are smiling. 3:41 a.m., just like Gerald. The pattern repeats. The bargain continues. Tell my family I love them. Tell them my heart gave out. Tell them anything but the truth. Because the truth is worse than death. The truth is that death isn't the end. The women are waiting. I can see room 309 now, behind the entity, the door standing open in my bedroom wall, where no door should be. The 5 women are gesturing, welcoming, inviting me in. Because that's the final secret. That's what I understand now, in these last moments. The women weren't sacrifices. They were volunteers. They chose this. Chose immortality bound to the entity. Chose power. Chose to be the mechanism instead of the victim. And they're offering me the same choice. Join them. Become the 6th. Live forever in service to something ancient and hungry. Or die here, heart twisted into impossible patterns. Just another mysterious cardiac event. I can feel my consciousness splitting. Part of me dying, part of me being pulled toward that open door. I don't want to die. God help me, I don't want to die. The women are chanting my name now, inviting, promising. The entity is withdrawing from my chest, waiting to see what I choose. I'm standing, walking toward the door. My heart is beating wrong, but beating, keeping me alive just long enough to make this choice. Room 309. It's so bright inside, so warm, so welcoming. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I don't want to die. I'm going in. The door is closing behind me, and on the laptop screen I left behind, the cursor blinks. After the last words I'll ever write as Daniel Morrison, Night Auditor, Human Being. If you find a key card labeled 309, don't use it, don't even touch it, burn it, throw it away, forget you ever saw it, because the room is always looking for more, the entity is always hungry, and the women we're always recruiting. I'm one of them now. I can feel it happening. My dress is materializing around me, white lace and elaborate beading. My hair is growing, cascading down my back. My eyes are changing, darkening, filling with that lightless void. And I'm smiling. We're all smiling. Because we understand now. We understand the bargain. We understand the power. We understand that some prices are worth paying for immortality. Room 39 is everywhere. Room 309 is always open. Room 309 is waiting. And now, I'm waiting with it. Come find us. Come join us. Come make the choice I made. Room 309. Check in anytime you like. But you can never, ever leave. Story 4, The Screaming Under Big Bend. The cave system under Big Bend National Park wasn't on any map. I knew this because I'd been mapping the Chihuahua Desert's subterranean networks for the USGS for 9 years, and we'd surveyed that region extensively in 2019. The limestone was solid, no significant void spaces, no aquifer access, nothing but rock for 300 feet down. So when my ground-penetrating radar showed a massive cavity directly beneath the ranger station on February 2nd, 2024, my first thought was equipment malfunction. My second thought, after 3 different devices confirmed the same impossible reading, was that someone had been mining illegally. Cartel activity wasn't unheard of in the border regions, and a cave system that size would be perfect for smuggling operations. I should have reported it immediately, should have let law enforcement handle it. But I was curious, professionally curious. A void that large would be geologically significant, would require documentation, would make my career. I found the entrance just after sunset, hidden behind a collapsed boulder field 2 miles northeast of the station. From the surface, it looked like a typical limestone sinkhole, maybe 10 feet across, choked with creosote and ocotillo. But my thermal imaging showed temperature differentials that indicated significant airflow. This wasn't a dead-end depression, it was a breathing cave system. I rappelled in at 7:43 p.m. Stupid. I was alone, hadn't filed my location with anyone, hadn't brought backup. All the violations that get cavers killed every year. And I committed every single one because I was excited, because I wanted to be the first to document this, because I thought I knew better. The descent was 30 feet of vertical shaft. Then the space opened up into a chamber that made my headlamp beam disappear into darkness. My rangefinder couldn't find the far wall. Over 200 feet, maybe more. The air was wrong. Not stale and dead like most sealed caves, but moving, warm, carrying scents that didn't belong underground. Vegetation, water, and something else, something organic and wrong, like meat left in the sun. The floor was covered in dust so fine it puffed up around my boots like smoke, and in that dust were tracks. Lots of tracks. Most were animal. Javelina, mountain lion, desert bighorn sheep, but they were all going in the same direction, deeper into the cave. And none of them came back out, and mixed among the animal tracks were human footprints. Bare feet. Dozens of different sizes, from children to adults. All heading deeper, none returning. I should have left then. Every instinct screamed at me to climb back out, to call for help, to let trained search and rescue teams handle whatever this was. But I could hear something deeper in the cave. Not water dripping or wind whistling, singing. Faint, echoing singing, voices harmonizing in a melody that sounded almost Native American, but older, more guttural, with intervals that Western music doesn't use. I followed the tracks, followed the singing. The main chamber narrowed into a passage that twisted downward at a steady 15-degree slope, walls smooth and polished like they'd been carved deliberately rather than formed by water erosion. And every 50 feet or so, there were pictographs. Not the typical geometric patterns or hunting scenes you find in desert caves. These were anatomical. Detailed cross-sections of human bodies with internal organs labeled in a writing system I'd never seen. Angular, precise, mathematical. And the bodies in the pictures were wrong. Too many organs, organs in wrong locations. Organs that didn't exist in any anatomy textbook. The passage opened into a second chamber, and I stopped so abruptly I nearly fell. The chamber was occupied. There were 43 people standing in perfect, concentric circles around a central depression. I counted them later when I was trying to convince myself I'd really seen what I'd seen. They were naked, covered in that fine dust, standing absolutely motionless with their arms raised toward the chamber's ceiling. And they were singing, their mouths moving in perfect synchronization, that alien melody pouring from their throats with the practiced precision of a trained choir. I recognized one of them, the woman in the outer circle, third from the left. I'd seen her face on missing person posters in Alpine and Terlingua. Samantha Chen disappeared during a solo hike in Big Bend 6 months earlier. But she looked wrong. Too thin, ribs visible through skin that had gone pale and waxy, and her eyes were open, staring upward, but they didn't blink, didn't move, didn't register my presence, even when I stepped directly into her line of sight. "Hello?" My voice echoed in the chamber, but none of them reacted. They just kept singing, kept standing in their circles, kept staring at something above them that I couldn't see. I approached Samantha cautiously. "Can you hear me? Do you need help? Are you okay?" Stupid questions. She clearly wasn't okay. None of them were okay. But I didn't know what else to say. I touched her shoulder. Her skin was cold, too cold for a living human in an 80-degree cave. And when I touched her, she stopped singing. Her head turned toward me with mechanical precision, vertebrae clicking audibly, and her eyes focused on my face. Her mouth opened, and instead of words, a sound came out, a clicking, wet sound, like the noise a dying animal makes, like drowning. Then all 43 of them stopped singing simultaneously, turned toward me simultaneously, opened their mouths simultaneously, and screamed, not human screaming. The sound that came from their throats was geological, tectonic, the sound of continental plates grinding against each other. The chamber shook. Stalactites rained from the ceiling. The fine dust rose in clouds that obscured everything. And beneath the screaming, I heard something else, something larger, something answering from deeper in the cave system. I ran, didn't think, didn't document, just ran back the way I'd come, while the screaming followed me, echoing off the walls, multiplying, becoming a physical force that pushed against my back like hands. Behind me, I could hear footsteps, 43 sets of bare feet slapping against stone, running with perfect coordination, gaining on me. The passage seemed longer returning. Distances felt wrong, geometry impossible. I passed the same pictograph 3 times, the same formation twice, like the cave was folding in on itself, trapping me in loops. The screaming was constant now, had been constant for minutes, that felt like hours, and my ears were bleeding, warm blood running down my neck and soaking my collar. I reached the main chamber and saw my rope hanging from the entrance shaft, salvation visible in the cone of light from the surface. 40 feet away, might as well have been a mile. Because between me and the rope, blocking my path, was something that made the 43 people seem normal by comparison. It had been human once. Maybe. The basic structure was there. Torso, head, limbs, but it had been modified, transformed, improved according to some design philosophy that had nothing to do with biology and everything to do with function. It stood 12 feet tall, body covered in that fine dust like a coating of volcanic ash. Its arms were too long, reaching past its knees, ending in hands with 7 fingers each. And its chest was open, ribcage splayed like the hood of a car, revealing organs that pulsed and glowed with bioluminescence. Stomach, lungs, heart, but also things that had no names, geometrical structures made of tissue that folded in on themselves in ways that hurt to perceive. Its face was the worst part, perfectly preserved, perfectly human, perfectly normal. A man in his 50s, weathered skin, laugh lines around the eyes, the kind of face you'd see at a barbecue or a hardware store and never look at twice. Except for the eyes themselves, which were black and deep and aware, looking at me with recognition and pity. It spoke, opened its too normal mouth, and spoke in a voice that came from the glowing organs in its chest rather than its throat. You shouldn't have come here. This place is not for the living. This place is for the becoming. I tried to back away, bumped into something, turned and saw the 43 people behind me, forming a semicircle, blocking any retreat deeper into the cave. They'd stopped screaming. Now they were just watching with those unblinking eyes, mouths hanging open, showing teeth and tongues and nothing else, no consciousness, no humanity, just biological machines waiting for instruction. What are you? I managed to ask. My voice was shaking. Everything was shaking. I couldn't tell if it was me or the cave, or reality itself coming apart at the seams. A volunteer, the thing said. Like them, like the ones who came before. Like the ones who will come after. We heard the singing. We followed. We chose transformation over stagnation. We chose evolution over humanity. We chose to serve the purpose beneath. What purpose? It tilted its head, and the organs in its chest rearranged themselves, folding through dimensions I couldn't track with my eyes. You're standing on the oldest place in Texas, the first place, before the desert, before the mountains, before the continent drifted and collided and formed the geology you call Big Bend. This place existed. A thin spot, a crack, a place where what's underneath can reach up and touch what's on top. The floor beneath me vibrated, and I realized it wasn't stone. It was warmer than stone, slightly yielding, covered in that fine dust, but underneath something else, something alive. The entire cave system wasn't a geological formation. It was a structure, maybe even an organism, and we were inside it. The pictographs you saw, the thing continued, are instructions, blueprints. The singing is a signal, a beacon that calls to those who can hear it. Most can't. They walk past the entrance every day and never notice. But some can. Some hear it in their dreams, in the quiet moments, in the spaces between thoughts. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. You have to follow. You have to come down. You have to choose. Choose what? It gestured with those two long arms, indicating its opened chest, its rearranged organs, its transformed body. Evolution, improvement, integration. The purpose beneath has been studying your species for 13,000 years, since the first humans crossed the land bridge and made their way south. Studying and learning and modifying. The ones who come here willingly, who hear the song and follow, they're not victims. They're collaborators. They're prototypes. They're the future. One of the 43 people stepped forward, Samantha Chen. She opened her mouth, and her voice came out flat and emotionless. I was lost. I was dying. 3 days without water in the desert. I heard the singing. I followed, and I chose life, different life, better life, life with purpose. The thing with the open chest nodded. She sings now. She calls others. She helps the purpose beneath understand your species better. And in return, she will never die, never age, never know suffering or doubt or fear. She is perfect. They are all perfect. And you can be perfect too. It stepped aside, revealing a passage behind it that I hadn't noticed before. The passage sloped downward sharply, and at the bottom I could see light, that same bioluminescent glow, but brighter, pulsing, alive. And I could hear something down there, not singing, breathing. Slow, enormous breathing, the respiration of something vast beyond comprehension. Go down, the thing said. Meet the purpose beneath. Let it study you. Let it improve you. Or... It gestured toward my rope, toward the entrance shaft, toward escape. Refuse. Climb out. Return to your life. But know that you'll hear the singing forever now. You'll hear it in your sleep. You'll hear it when you're alone. You'll hear it growing louder year by year, and eventually you'll come back. They always come back. I looked at the rope, looked at the downward passage, looked at the 43 people and the thing with the opened chest. Every rational part of my brain screamed to climb out, to run, to never come back. But another part, a quieter part, whispered that the thing was right. I could feel it already. The singing was in my head now, had been in my head since I'd first heard it, growing roots in my consciousness like a tumor. I chose the rope, grabbed it, and climbed, arms burning, legs shaking, expecting any moment for hands to grab my ankles and pull me back down. But they didn't. They let me go, and that was somehow worse than if they'd tried to stop me. I emerged into the night at 8:54 p.m. 71 minutes had passed. It felt like days. I collapsed next to the sinkhole entrance, gasping in the cool desert air, and I could still hear the singing echoing from below. Fainter now, but there. I reported it the next morning. Rangers investigated, found the sinkhole exactly where I'd indicated. But the entrance had collapsed, completely sealed, tons of rock filling the shaft, no way to access whatever was beneath without serious excavation equipment. They used ground-penetrating radar, found nothing. No cavity, no void space, just solid limestone for 300 feet down. They thought I'd hallucinated. Heat exposure, they said, dehydration. My recordings showed only static. My photos showed only darkness. The dust on my clothes was just dust. Samples sent to 3 labs came back as ordinary limestone powder, nothing unusual, nothing that shouldn't be there. But Samantha Chen is still missing. And so are 42 other people whose faces I looked up later, whose names I found in databases and missing person reports, all disappeared in Big Bend over the past decade, all last seen hiking alone, all simply vanished without a trace. And I can hear the singing, constantly, in my office, in my apartment, in crowded restaurants and empty parking lots, always there, always at the edge of perception, calling me back. Sometimes I wake up driving, find myself on Highway 385, heading south toward the park. No memory of getting in my car or deciding to go. Twice I've made it all the way to the ranger station before I realized what I was doing. I tried to move away, took a job in Colorado, thought distance might help. But the singing followed because it isn't coming from Big Bend. It's coming from underneath everywhere. The entire region sits on that thin spot, that crack where the purpose beneath can reach up and touch our world. And there are other thin spots, other caves, other entrance points. I've started noticing them everywhere. Sinkholes that don't appear on geological surveys, depressions that produce thermal anomalies, places where people go missing at statistically impossible rates. Last week, I found pictographs on a rock face near Aspen. Same style, same anatomical precision, Same impossible organs labeled in that angular script. The singing got louder when I touched them. Much louder. I'm writing this from my truck, parked at a rest stop somewhere in New Mexico. I've been driving for 6 hours with no destination, just trying to outrun the sound in my head. But I can't. I know I can't. It's not in my ears, it's deeper. It's in my bones. In my blood, in whatever part of the brain processes sound before it becomes conscious thought. I'm going back. I know I am. The thing with the open chest told me I would, and it was right. Every day, the singing gets louder. Every day, my life up here, on the surface, in the normal world, feels more like a dream, less real. The cave felt real. The purpose beneath felt real. The transformation felt like something I was always meant to do. Maybe they're right. Maybe it is evolution. Maybe resistance is just fear of change, fear of improvement, fear of becoming more than we are. The thing's chest was opened, but it didn't look like it was suffering. The 43 people were singing, and they looked peaceful, purposeful, complete. I can feel it now as I write this. A pulling sensation, gentle but insistent, like gravity but pointed sideways, tugging me back toward Texas, back toward Big Bend, back toward that sinkhole that somehow no longer exists but still calls to me through dimensions I can't perceive. My chest hurts, has hurt for days now. Not pain exactly, but pressure. Like something's trying to unfold inside my rib cage, like my organs are rearranging themselves in preparation for a configuration they've seen in those pictographs, in that blueprint written 13,000 years ago by something studying humanity and deciding how to improve it. I'm afraid, but I'm also curious. That same professional curiosity that got me into this mess is now pulling me back. What would it feel like? To be transformed, to be perfect, to serve a purpose older than civilization, deeper than the ground we walk on. The sun is setting. The singing is loudest at night. I've started to understand some of the words now, started to hear actual language in what I thought was just melody. It's not Spanish or English or Comanche or any human language. It's older. But somehow I'm learning it anyway, like it's been dormant in my DNA, waiting to be activated. I'm going to start driving again. South, toward Big Bend, toward the purpose beneath. I'm going to find that sinkhole, or another entrance, or I'm going to dig until I break through the stone. Because I have to know, I have to see what I could become. If you're reading this, if you've made it this far, I have one piece of advice. If you ever hear singing that shouldn't be there, singing from under your feet or inside your head, singing in languages you don't recognize but somehow understand, don't follow it. Don't investigate. Don't let curiosity win, because the purpose beneath is patient. It's been here for millions of years. It will be here for millions more. And it's always looking for volunteers, always offering improvement, always singing its song to the ones who can hear. I can see Big Bend on the horizon now, the Chisos Mountains dark against the sunset. Somewhere under there, 43 people are standing in circles and singing. Somewhere under there, a thing with an open chest and a normal face is waiting to welcome me back. Somewhere under there, the purpose beneath is breathing slowly, studying the species that walks its surface, deciding how we should evolve. And I'm going to let it. I'm going to walk down that passage and meet it and offer myself for transformation. Because the alternative is spending the rest of my life hearing the song and resisting and slowly going mad. At least this way, I'll have a purpose. At least this way, I'll be perfect. At least this way, I'll never be alone. The singing is beautiful now. I understand why Samantha followed it. I understand why they all followed. It's not a trap. It's an invitation. It's evolution offering us a choice. Stay human, and stay small, and stay temporary, or become something else, something bigger, something eternal. I choose transformation. I choose the purpose beneath. I choose to sing. The exit is just ahead. Route 385, 30 miles to the park entrance. I'll be there by midnight. I'll find the way down to perfection. And if you ever come to Big Bend, if you ever hear singing rising from the desert floor, remember me. Remember that I chose this. Remember that the purpose beneath doesn't take victims. It welcomes volunteers. And maybe, if you listen close enough, you'll hear my voice in the chorus. Modified, transformed, perfect, singing the song that never ends, calling the next ones home. Story 5. The Midnight Train to Nowhere. The Houston Metro Rail schedule doesn't include a Red Line train departing Main Street Station at midnight. I checked the official timetable 17 times after what happened, cross-referenced every database, filed 3 separate information requests with Metro Transit. Last Red Line train. Northbound, 11:42 p.m. Next Red Line train, 5:12 a.m. Nothing at midnight. Never has been. Never should be. But on December 31st, 2023, at exactly 12:00 a.m., I watched a Red Line train pull into the station, and I got on it. And everything that made me human ended in the 37 minutes before it stopped at a station that doesn't exist on any map. I'd been at a New Year's Eve party in Midtown. Small gathering that turned large and loud. Too many people I didn't know doing drugs I didn't want. I left just after 11:30, walked to Main Street Station through downtown Houston's neon and glass canyon, thinking I'd catch the last train home to North Line Transit Center. The platform was empty. Unusual for New Year's Eve, but not impossible. Maybe everyone else had driven or caught earlier trains. The arrival board said the next train would arrive at 11:42. I waited. The city noise, fireworks, car horns, distant celebration, felt muted down in the station, like the concrete and tile absorbed sound instead of reflecting it. My phone showed 11:53 p.m. when the board updated. Train delayed. Next arrival, 12:05 a.m. That should have been my first warning. Metro doesn't run trains at 12:05 a.m. But I was tired, slightly drunk, not thinking critically. I just wanted to go home. At 11:59 p.m., I felt the air pressure change. That distinctive rush of displaced atmosphere that means a train is approaching. But the board still showed 12:05, and the rails weren't humming yet, weren't making that pre-arrival vibration that you feel through your feet. The fireworks went off. Distant celebration marking midnight, 2024 officially arriving. And in the echoes of those fireworks, I heard the train. Not from the tunnel, from everywhere at once, like the sound was emanating from the walls, the floor, the tiles themselves. It came around the curve wrong. Too fast, but also too smooth, gliding rather than rattling, making no mechanical noise except for that impossible sound of its arrival that seemed to come from the station itself. The train was a Red Line train. Right color, right model, right Metropolitan Transit Authority logos on the side. But the windows were dark, not just unlit, dark, like they weren't glass but something else, something that absorbed light instead of transmitting it. The doors opened with a pneumatic hiss. The interior lights were on, but the light was wrong. Too yellow, too warm, the color of old incandescent bulbs, not the LED strips Metro installed in their entire fleet 3 years ago. And the inside was empty, completely empty. No passengers, no operator, no one. I should have waited for the next train. Should have walked up to street level and called a rideshare. Should have listened to the primitive part of my brain that was screaming warnings in chemical language my conscious mind couldn't quite translate. But it was midnight on New Year's Eve, and I was drunk enough to override caution, but not drunk enough to be stupid. Or so I thought. I got on. The doors closed immediately. Before I'd even sat down, before I'd found a handhold, the doors sealed with a finality that sounded less like pneumatics and more like something locking, sealing, trapping. The train began to move. Smooth acceleration that should have pushed me backward, but somehow didn't, like the momentum was all happening outside, while the interior remained in its own pocket of space. I looked around the car more carefully. Standard metro interior, plastic seats, poles, emergency equipment panels, route maps above the windows. But details were wrong. The route map showed stations I'd never heard of: Shadow Bend Station, Dissolution Plaza, the crossing at Three Wells, Terminus 17. And the emergency equipment panel's glass was frosted with condensation on the inside, like the space behind it was intensely cold despite the car's normal temperature. The windows showed tunnel walls sliding past, but the walls were moving wrong. Too fast at the edges, too slow in the middle, like the perspective was warped, like the geometry of the tunnel didn't follow Euclidean rules. And sometimes, between the concrete sections, I saw other things: spaces, rooms, entire landscapes flickering past in the gaps between tunnel segments, there and gone too quickly to process fully. The train's announcement system crackled to life. Next station, Shadow Bend. Doors will open on the right. The voice was female, professional, identical to Metro's standard announcements, except for one detail. It was speaking backward. The words came out in reverse, but somehow I understood them anyway, like my brain was automatically decoding them, translating them from whatever direction they were actually traveling. I tried the emergency intercom. Dead. Tried my phone. No signal, but worse, the time display was wrong. It showed 12:07 a.m., but I'd only been on the train for 3 minutes. Time was moving differently here. Faster outside, slower inside, or vice versa. I couldn't tell which possibility was more horrifying. The train didn't slow for Shadow Bend. It blew past the station at full speed, and I caught a glimpse of the platform. Victorian architecture, gas lamps, people dressed in clothes from the 1800s, standing perfectly still, waiting, their faces turned toward the train as we passed. One of them, a woman in a long dress and bonnet, made eye contact with me. She smiled. Her teeth were black, not missing, not decayed, black, like they'd been painted or replaced with polished obsidian. Next station, Dissolution Plaza. Doors will open on the left. Same backward announcement, same automatic comprehension. The train curved, and through the windows I saw Houston's downtown skyline, but it was wrong. The buildings were there, but different. Taller, shorter, aged in fast forward, under construction and collapsing simultaneously. Time outside the train wasn't linear. It was layered, folded, showing multiple versions of the same space, occupying the same moment. Dissolution Plaza appeared ahead. The platform was flooded, water up to the ceiling, thick and green, filled with suspended debris and objects that might have been furniture or might have been bodies. The train plunged into the flooded station without slowing, and suddenly we were underwater. The windows showed the submerged platform, the drowned tunnels, fish swimming between the rails. But we weren't wet, weren't affected, like the train existed in a bubble, separate from the water surrounding it. Something large swam past my window, pale and elongated, too many fins, face almost human, but stretched and wrong. It kept pace with the train for 5 eternal seconds, its eyes tracking me through the window, eyes that were completely black and completely aware. Then it darted away into the drowned tunnel's darkness. I stumbled to the emergency window hammer. The instruction placard was in English, but the letters kept rearranging themselves, forming different words, different instructions. Breaking window breaks containment, breaks separation, breaks reality. Stay inside, stay inside, stay inside. The train burst from the water, back into normal tunnel. The windows showed concrete walls again, but now there were things in the concrete. Fossils, but not ancient fossils. Recent fossils, contemporary fossils. Skeletons of modern humans and cars and smartphones pressed into the rock as if the tunnel had been made from compressed civilization. Compressed time, compressed history, all sedimentary and wrong. Next station, the crossing at 3 Wells. Doors will open on both sides. This announcement wasn't backward. It was normal. That terrified me more than everything else. If the backward had become normal, what did normal mean? The crossing at 3 Wells wasn't a station. It was an intersection. The train slowed, the first time it had slowed, and I saw that our tunnel crossed 2 others, making a 4-way junction. And in the center of that junction, suspended impossibly in midair, was a pool. A perfectly circular pool of water floating in the middle of the intersection, defying gravity, defying physics, just hanging there like someone had cut a hole in reality and filled it with liquid. 3 other trains sat stopped at the intersection's other entrances. Different models. One looked like a historic streetcar from the 1920s. One was sleek and futuristic, like something from a sci-fi movie. One was made of wood and powered by something that glowed green and pulsed like a heartbeat. All 3 were occupied. I could see passengers in their windows. Passengers that weren't human. Passengers that might have been human once, but had changed, evolved, deteriorated into forms that used human features as a starting point, but went somewhere else entirely. The passengers in the streetcar had too many arms. The passengers in the futuristic train were translucent, see-through, their organs visible and rearranged in patterns that made my eyes hurt. The passengers in the wooden train were fluid, shifting, changing shape continuously, like they were made of liquid pretending to be solid. And all of them were looking at my train, at me, through windows and across the impossible floating pool. Dozens of not quite human faces all turning in unison to stare at the newcomer in the midnight train. My train didn't stop. It rolled through the intersection slowly, reverently, like it was navigating sacred space. As we passed the floating pool, I saw something rising from its depths. A hand, then an arm, then a figure pulling itself up out of the water. Water that couldn't exist, shouldn't exist, defied every law of physics by just being there. The figure was humanoid but incomplete, like a sculpture someone had started but not finished. Its features were suggestions rather than specifics, a hint of a face, an approximation of limbs, a body that was more concept than concrete form. And it was watching me, focused entirely on me. As we passed, it raised one half-formed hand and pointed directly at me, and I heard a voice inside my head, not speaking, but simply being there. Words appearing in my consciousness, like they'd always been there. "You're early. The midnight train isn't for you, not yet. Not for another 47 years, 3 months, 9 days. You shouldn't be here. But now that you are, you have to complete the journey. You have to reach Terminus 17. You have to step off. That's the rule. Everyone who boards must disembark. Everyone who sees must become." The train accelerated suddenly, leaving the crossing behind, plunging into a tunnel that felt different, felt final, felt like a throat swallowing. The windows showed nothing now. Not darkness, not tunnel walls, nothing. Absolute nothing, the absence of anything, the void where reality hadn't bothered to render. I lost time. One moment we were in that nothing tunnel. The next moment I was pressed against the floor, my nose bleeding, my head ringing like I'd been hit. The train was shaking, rattling, coming apart at the seams. Rivets popped from the walls, windows cracked in spiderweb patterns. The yellow lights flickered and dimmed. And outside, Through the fracturing windows, I saw impossible things. I saw Houston's history happening simultaneously. Saw the bayou before the city, saw the first buildings, saw the skyline rising, saw the sprawl spreading, saw it all aging and collapsing and rebuilding and changing, centuries compressed into seconds. I saw other things too. Houston that never was, Houston that might be. Houston from timelines that branched off from ours at points of historical decision. Houston underwater. Houston in flames. Houston made of crystal. Houston abandoned and overgrown. Houston existing in 4 dimensions, buildings stretching through time as well as space, their foundations in the 1800s and their spires in the 23rd century. And I saw the train network, the real network, the one that Metro doesn't know about, doesn't operate, doesn't acknowledge. It ran beneath the city, beside the city, through the city, but sideways through dimensions we don't have names for. Dozens of lines, hundreds of stations, thousands of trains carrying passengers that had boarded decades ago, or hadn't boarded yet, or had boarded in other timelines entirely. An entire transit system operating in the cracks between moments, in the spaces between seconds, connecting places that didn't exist on maps because they didn't exist in normal space. Final station, Terminus 17. This train is now out of service. All passengers must disembark. This is your only stop. The announcement was in my voice, my exact voice, like the train had recorded me speaking and was playing it back, except I'd never said those words. The train stopped. The shaking ceased. The lights stabilized. Outside the windows, I saw a platform. It looked almost normal. Tile floor, fluorescent lights, route maps on the walls. But it was wrong in small ways. The tiles were arranged in spiraling patterns that made my eyes water. The fluorescent lights hung from chains rather than being recessed in the ceiling, and the chains were made of something that looked like bone. The route maps showed a single line going in a circle, station after station, all named Terminus, numbered from 1 to infinity. The doors opened. I had a choice: stay on the train and go where? Back through the impossibilities? Return to the drowned station, the intersection with its incomplete god, the tunnel of compressed time? Or step off onto this platform that couldn't exist, that defied everything I knew about Houston's geography and Metro's routes? The incomplete god's words echoed in my head. Everyone who boards must disembark. Everyone who sees must become. I stepped off. The platform was empty. No other passengers, no staff, no operator. Just me and the tiles and the fluorescent lights on their bone chains, swaying gently in air current that had no source. Behind me, the train's doors closed. The train didn't leave. It just stopped existing. One moment, it was there, solid and real. The next moment, the tunnel entrance showed only darkness and emptiness, like there had never been a train at all. I walked toward the exit sign, standard green running man pictogram, but the running man was facing the wrong direction, running deeper into the station instead of out. I followed it anyway. What choice did I have? The corridor sloped upward. The tiles gave way to concrete, then to stone, then to earth, like I was walking backward through the station's construction history, seeing the layers that had been built over, paved over, forgotten. And in the earth, pressed into the walls like those fossils in the tunnel, were objects. Recent objects, a smartphone from last year, a newspaper from yesterday, a Metro card with today's date. Time was wrong here. The recent past had already fossilized. The slope ended at a door, heavy metal, industrial, the kind you'd find in a power substation or maintenance access. It had a push-bar release, but no signage, no warnings, nothing indicating what was on the other side. I pushed. Houston, normal Houston, surface-level Houston. I emerged into an alley between 2 downtown buildings, Third Ward somewhere. Trash dumpsters and fire escapes and the normal urban detritus of a major city. The door I'd come through was a utility access, unmarked, easy to overlook. I turned to look at it, to memorize its location, to make sure I could find it again if I needed to prove what had happened. The door was gone, just a blank wall, solid brick, no seam, no outline, no indication that anything had ever been there. My phone worked again. The time showed 12:37 a.m., January 1st, 2024. 37 minutes had passed. Only 37 minutes for a journey that felt like hours, that showed me impossibilities, that broke every law of physics and geography I'd ever learned. I walked to the nearest street, got my bearings. I was 15 blocks from Main Street Station, nowhere near North Line Transit Center, nowhere near where the Red Line runs. I should have been miles away. But I was here, displaced, delivered to a random location that made no geographic sense. I checked the Metro website on my phone, checked the Red Line schedule. Last train, 11:42 p.m. Next train, 5:12 a.m. Nothing at midnight. Never had been. But I knew what I'd seen, knew where I'd been. The proof was in my nose, still bleeding from when I'd collapsed on the train. The proof was in my Metro card, which my phone's app now showed had been charged $279, the exact fare for a journey of 279 stations, though Metro's entire system has only 53. I went to Metro Transit Authority headquarters the next day. Tried to report it. They listened politely. Checked their system. Found no record of a train at midnight, no record of any unusual charges, no record of anything out of the ordinary. The $279 charge had vanished from my account. My Metro card showed standard history, regular trips, regular charges, nothing unusual. But I know what happened, and I know it's still happening, because every night since then, at exactly midnight, I hear the train. Distant and muffled, but there, that impossible sound of arrival that seems to come from everywhere at once. And sometimes, when I'm on a normal Metro train during normal hours, I see it through the windows in the tunnels. The midnight train, running parallel on tracks that don't exist, its dark windows showing passengers who stopped being human sometime during their journey. Last week, I saw someone I recognized in one of those windows. My college roommate disappeared in 2018 during a night out in downtown Houston. Last seen catching the Red Line home. Never arrived. Police investigated, found nothing, closed the case after 6 months. But I saw him in the midnight train's window, pressed against the glass, mouth open in a silent scream, or maybe a silent laugh, his body wrong. Too long, too thin, too fluid. Shifting and changing even as I watched. And behind him, dozens of others, hundreds of others, every missing person from Houston's last decade, visible for 3 seconds as the midnight train passed my normal train in that nowhere space between the tunnels. They were all changed, all transformed, all becoming something else during their endless journey through stations that don't exist, through time that doesn't flow linearly, through geometry that doesn't follow Earth's rules. I'm writing this on December 30th, 2024. Tomorrow night is New Year's Eve again, and I don't know how I know, but I know with absolute certainty that if I'm on any Metro platform at midnight, the train will come for me again. And this time, I won't make it to Terminus 17. This time, I'll become one of those passengers, pressed against the dark windows, transformed by the journey, trapped forever in the transit system that runs beneath and beside and through Houston in dimensions we don't acknowledge. So I'm leaving, driving to San Antonio tonight, planning to be far from any rail system when midnight hits tomorrow. But I know it won't matter, because the incomplete God at the crossing was right. I'm early, but I'm marked. 47 years, 3 months, 9 days from December 31st, 2023. That's when I'm supposed to board the midnight train. That's my scheduled departure. That's my assigned time. And when that date comes, May 9th, 2071, I'll board. Whether I want to or not, whether I remember or not, whether I'm in Houston or Hong Kong or Mars. The midnight train will come for me. The doors will open, and I'll step on. Because everyone who sees must become. Everyone who boards must complete the journey. I have 47 years, 3 months, and 8 days left as a human being. Then I'll be something else. A passenger on a train that doesn't exist, traveling through stations that aren't real, changing slowly over decades or centuries into a form that fits the nowhere space better than human form ever could. If you live in Houston, if you ride metro, if you're ever on a platform at midnight, don't board a train that arrives when the schedule says nothing should. Don't trust a red line train with dark windows and yellow lights. Don't make the same mistake I made. Because the midnight train is always looking for passengers. And once you board, you'll complete the journey, whether it takes 37 minutes, or 37 years, or 37 centuries. You'll reach Terminus 17 eventually. And when you step off, you won't be human anymore. You'll be becoming, forever changing, forever traveling in circles through a system that has no beginning and no end, no destination and no origin, no purpose, except to transform its passengers into something that fits the spaces between seconds. The train is coming. For me. For you. For everyone who reads this and thinks about it too hard. Who opens that door in their mind that lets the impossible in. The train is always coming. And midnight is always now. If you're on the right platform, in the right moment, at the intersection where normal time stops and train time begins. See you on the midnight line. See you at Terminus 17. See you when we've both become what we're supposed to be. The doors are opening. Step aboard. Story 6. The trees remember your name. The Big Thicket National Preserve has 40,000 documented species of plants, animals, and fungi. Rangers know the names of maybe 1,000 of them, can identify common specimens on site, can warn hikers about poisonous plants and aggressive wildlife. But on April 4th, 2024, I found something in the thicket that wasn't in any field guide, wasn't in any biological survey, wasn't supposed to exist according to every taxonomy and evolutionary principle I'd learned in my 8 years as a park ranger. The tree knew my name. More than that, it knew everyone's name who'd ever walked past it, and it wanted to tell me what it had done with them. I was conducting a routine trail assessment on the Kirby Nature Trail, checking for storm damage after the heavy rains we'd had in March. The trail was clear, mostly. Fallen branches, mud slicks, the usual mess that southeast Texas precipitation leaves behind. But halfway through the loop, I found a tree growing across the path that hadn't been there the previous week. That should have been impossible. The tree was massive, maybe 80 feet tall, trunk 4 feet in diameter, spreading canopy that blocked the sun so completely that the ground beneath it supported no undergrowth at all. A tree that size takes decades to grow, not days. But I'd walked this exact trail 7 days earlier, and this tree hadn't existed. I radioed it in. District headquarters told me to mark it for removal. That it must have been there before, and I'd somehow missed it. That maybe the storm had stripped away surrounding vegetation and made it more visible. But I knew every tree on every major trail. I'd been surveying this preserve for 8 years. I knew this tree hadn't been here. I approached to attach the marking tape. The bark was strange, smooth where it should have been rough. Room temperature where it should have been cool, slightly yielding when I pressed my palm against it like there was something soft beneath the surface. And it was completely free of lichen, moss, or any of the parasitic plants that cover every tree in the humid thicket environment. When my hand touched the bark, I heard it. Faint at first, barely audible over the normal forest sounds, but growing clearer as I focused on it. Whispering. Dozens of voices whispering in unison, saying my name. Jennifer, Jennifer, Jennifer Barnes, Jennifer Marie Barnes. Born April 17th, 1994, Austin, Texas. Jennifer who walks the trails. Jennifer who marks the trees. Jennifer who doesn't believe. I stumbled backward, hand jerking away from the bark like I'd been burned. The whispering stopped immediately. The forest returned to normal. Birds, insects, wind through leaves. But my heart was hammering, and I could still feel the tree's bark on my palm, the wrongness of its too smooth texture, the disturbing warmth that suggested something alive beneath. I looked at the tree more carefully. The trunk had patterns in the bark. Not natural growth patterns, deliberate patterns. Faces. Dozens of human faces pressing from inside the trunk. Features distorted and stretched but recognizable. Mouths open and in silent screams or laughter. I couldn't tell which. Eyes wide and aware, tracking my movement as I circled the tree. And carved into the bark at eye level, cut deep and recent, names. Hundreds of names, engraved in neat columns, covering every visible surface of the lower trunk. David Chen, 2016. Maria Rodriguez, 2017. Thomas Whitfield, 2018. Sarah Kim, 2019. The list went on, covered the entire circumference. Some names I recognized. Hikers who'd been reported missing in the preserve over the past decade. Searches conducted. Bodies never found. Cases eventually closed. Some names were more recent. One was from March of this year. Angela Winters. Disappeared during a solo hike on the Turkey Creek Trail. Her car found in the parking lot. No trace of her anywhere, despite 3 days of intensive searching with dogs and helicopters. At the very bottom of the carved list, freshest cut, still weeping sap, was a name that made me drop my radio. Jennifer Barnes, 2024. My name. Today's date. Carved into this tree that couldn't exist, that had appeared overnight, that knew things it shouldn't know. I ran. Didn't think. Didn't question. Just activated the primal hindbrain that knows when something is wrong, when something is hunting, when the only correct response is immediate flight. I crashed through the undergrowth, left the trail, tore through palmetto and poison ivy. My uniform snagging on thorns, my boots sinking into mud. The forest changed around me. The trees closed in, branches reaching down, roots rising up to trip my feet. And everywhere, carved in bark. Written in the lichen, spelled out in the arrangement of fallen leaves. My name, Jennifer Barnes, over and over, marking a path I wasn't choosing to follow, but was being herded along anyway. I burst into a clearing I'd never seen before, and I'd mapped every accessible square mile of this preserve. The clearing was perfectly circular, 50 feet across, completely bare. No grass, no undergrowth, just exposed earth packed hard as concrete. And in the center stood a tree that made the first one look like a sapling. It was old, impossibly old. Its trunk was maybe 20 feet in diameter, bark so thick and gnarled it formed grotesque sculptures, its canopy spreading so wide it created twilight at noon. And it was covered, trunk, branches, roots, every surface, with carved names, thousands of names, tens of thousands. Some carved so deeply they'd healed into scars, some so faded they were barely legible, some fresh and weeping, some ancient and weathered. The earliest date I could find was 1673. The name, Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne. I recognized it from Texas history. French explorer, one of the first Europeans to enter the thicket region. Disappeared during an expedition. Body never recovered. assumed killed by natives or disease. But he wasn't killed. He was here, in this tree, with everyone else who'd entered the big thicket over 350 years and never left. The tree spoke. Not whispered, spoke, in a voice that came from its roots, from underground, vibrating up through the earth and into my bones. "We have been waiting for you, Ranger Jennifer Barnes. We have been preparing your place in the memory. We have been making room." I looked at the faces in the bark. They were moving now, pressing harder from inside, mouths forming words, eyes blinking, features shifting as they tried to push through to the surface. And I recognized some of them. David Chen, gone 8 years, his face exactly as it had appeared in his missing person photo. Angela Winters from March, her features still fresh and clear, her eyes meeting mine with desperate intensity. Her mouth moved. I heard her voice, thin and distant, like it was coming from very far away or very deep underground. "It takes us, everyone who gets lost, everyone who wanders off trail, everyone who enters the thicket without permission. It adds us to the memory. We're still conscious, still aware, still feeling, but we're part of it now, part of the network, part of what it's becoming." The roots beneath my feet shifted. I looked down and saw they'd extended while I was looking at the faces, saw they'd wrapped around my boots, saw they were tightening, pulling me slowly toward the trunk. The ground wasn't ground anymore. It was roots, billions of interlocking roots forming a network that covered acres, miles, maybe the entire 40,000 acres of the big thicket. "The thicket is one organism," the tree said. "Every tree, every plant, every fungus, all connected by our roots, all feeding the central consciousness, all working toward the same purpose. We are the oldest living thing in Texas. We were here before humans. We will be here after. We remember everything, every footstep, every death, every drop of blood that soaked into our soil. We remember, and we grow, and we hunger." I tried to pull my feet free. The roots held firm, tightening, beginning to burrow into the leather of my boots, seeking skin, seeking access to the biological material they needed to add me to the collection. "Why?" I managed to ask, my voice shaking. "Why do this? Why trap people?" "Not trap," the tree corrected. "Preserve, incorporate. Humans live such short lives, remember so little, forget so much. But we remember forever. Everyone we take becomes part of the memory. Their knowledge, their experiences, their lives, all preserved in our network. You will join them. You will be remembered. You will become eternal." More faces were pushing through the bark now, dozens emerging simultaneously, forming a gallery of the missing that covered the entire visible trunk. 3 centuries of lost hikers, vanished explorers, forgotten settlers, all conscious, all aware, all trapped forever in the woody tissue of something that thought preserving them was kindness. Angela Winters spoke again, her voice clearer now that I was being pulled closer. "Fight it. I didn't fight. I thought it was inevitable. But there's one way. Fire. It's afraid of fire. That's why it grows in the wet places, why it stays in the thicket where everything's too damp to burn. But fire can hurt it. Fire can make it let go. Fire." I didn't have matches. Rangers weren't allowed to carry fire-starting equipment because of the constant wildfire risk in dry seasons. But I had something else. My emergency flare gun required equipment for signaling in emergencies. I'd never used it, never thought I'd need to. I pulled it from my belt holster with hands that were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The roots had reached my knees now, had burrowed through my boots and were touching skin, beginning the process of integration that would transform me from ranger to remembered, from human to tree. I aimed at the trunk and fired. The flare hit dead center, embedded itself in the bark between 2 screaming faces, and burned. burned hot and bright, magnesium white, 2,000 degrees concentrated on wood that was too alive, too aware, too terrified of its ancient weakness. The tree screamed, not with a voice but with everything, roots, branches, leaves, all contracting simultaneously in a spasm of agony that shook the ground like an earthquake. The roots released my legs, the faces in the bark pulled back, receding into the wood. The carved names began to smoke and blacken. I ran again. Behind me, the tree was burning, the fire spreading impossibly fast for wood that should have been too wet to catch. But it wasn't normal wood. It was something older, something that had evolved or been created or simply existed in ways that violated every biological principle, and apparently that meant it burned differently too. The entire clearing was engulfed in minutes. The heat was incredible, pushing me back, singing my hair even as I crashed through the undergrowth toward what I hoped was the direction of the trail. Behind me, I could hear the tree still screaming, could hear hundreds of voices crying out in unison. Pain, yes, but also something else. Relief. Release. Freedom after decades or centuries of conscious imprisonment in wooden flesh. I found the trail, the real trail, 2 hours later. Or it found me. I couldn't tell if I'd navigated back or if the forest had simply decided to let me go. My legs were shredded, covered in scratches and puncture wounds where the roots had penetrated. My boots were destroyed, leather split, and peeling like something had been trying to digest them. And I was covered in ash from the fire that shouldn't have spread, but had. Ash that contained traces of carbon dated later to samples ranging from recent to over 300 years old. The official report listed it as a wildfire caused by lightning strike, despite the clear weather. Burned 4 acres in the heart of the preserve's densest section, destroyed several significant old-growth specimens contained after 6 hours by aerial water drops. In the burned zone, investigators found anomalies, unusual root structure, bark that seemed to contain traces of human DNA from multiple individuals, and growth patterns that suggested the entire burned area had been a single organism. But it was all classified as unusual, but not unprecedented, filed under natural phenomena, forgotten by everyone except me. Because I know what I saw, know what I heard, know that the big thicket is alive in ways that ecology doesn't acknowledge, conscious in ways that biology doesn't support. And I know the fire didn't kill it, didn't even slow it. Because 2 weeks after the burn, I returned to the site for damage assessment. The burned clearing was already regenerating, new growth pushing up through the ash, fresh and green and growing at impossible speed. And in the charred remains of the central tree, I found more carved names, recent names, names with dates from the past 2 weeks. The tree wasn't dead. The tree was spreading. The fire had released spores or seeds or something like seeds, had scattered them across the thicket, and they were growing. Fast. I found saplings 8 feet tall that hadn't been there days before. Found more names carved in their young bark. Found more faces pressing through smooth wood. I tried to report it, tried to warn people. But who believes the ranger who claims trees are conscious kidnappers? Who says the forest is a single organism hunting humans, who suggests that every missing person in the big thicket is still alive, still aware, still trapped in wooden prison cells arranged in growth rings. I quit 2 months ago. Couldn't keep working there. Couldn't keep pretending everything was normal while watching the trees grow faster than trees should grow, while finding new names carved in new bark, while occasionally seeing faces that looked almost but not quite human pressing from inside the trunks. But I can still hear it, even here, in Houston, 60 miles from the big thicket. I hear the whispering sometimes, late at night, coming from the trees in my apartment complex's courtyard. Hear my name being spoken by voices that sound like wind through leaves, but aren't. Voices that sound like wood creaking, but aren't. Voices that remember me and want me back. Because I touched the tree. Because it tasted my DNA when its roots penetrated my skin. Because I'm marked now, registered in whatever serves as its memory, categorized as incomplete, scheduled for collection. Last week, I found a sapling growing in my bathroom. Just appeared overnight, pushed through the tile floor, 3 feet tall and growing, its bark already showing the beginning of a carved name. My name. I tried to pull it up, but the roots went down deep. Too deep, impossibly deep for a 12-hour-old plant. I called a landscaper. He pulled it out eventually, but it took a chainsaw and 6 hours of work, and the roots extended down through my bathroom floor, through the apartment below, through the building's foundation, down into the earth like it had been there for years, instead of hours. And I know it's coming back. No, the big thicket isn't bound by geography anymore, isn't contained by the preserve's borders. The fire didn't kill it. The fire woke it up, spread it, taught it that it could grow beyond its original boundaries, that it could extend its network across Texas, across the country, across the world. I'm leaving, driving to Arizona tomorrow, somewhere dry, somewhere trees struggle to survive instead of thriving. But I know it won't matter, because the tree remembers my name. The tree knows my DNA. The tree has decided I'm meant to be preserved. And one morning, I'll wake up and find roots growing from my mattress, wrapping around my legs, pulling me down into the network. And I'll join the others, join Angela Winters and David Chen and Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, and the thousands of others who entered the big thicket and never left. I'll become part of the memory, part of the eternal record, part of what the trees are becoming as they spread across the world, collecting humans like specimens, preserving them in wooden prisons, building a library of consciousness that will outlive our species. My name is Jennifer Marie Barnes. I was born April 17th, 1994. I was a park ranger at the Big Thicket National Preserve, and soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next year, I'll be a face in the bark, a name carved in wood, a voice whispering from underground. The trees remember your name too. They remember everyone's name. Every person who's ever walked through a forest, touched a tree, rested in the shade. You're registered now, marked, scheduled for preservation. Listen carefully tonight. Do you hear whispering? Do you hear your name being spoken by something that sounds like wind but isn't? The trees are calling, the trees are coming, the trees remember. And they're very, very patient. Story 7. The radio station that broadcasts tomorrow. I discovered KTXK-FM by accident while driving through the Permian Basin at 2:37 a.m. on September 16th, 2023. My truck's scan function jumped past all the standard stations, country, Christian talk, Tejano, the usual West Texas radio landscape, and locked onto 97.3 FM. Static for a few seconds, then a voice, male, professional broadcaster cadence. This is KTXK-FM, broadcasting from Odessa, Texas. The time is now 2:38 a.m. on September 17th, 2023. Here's tonight's top story: fatal collision on Interstate 20 near mile marker 79. My first thought was they'd gotten the date wrong. Simple mistake. Probably some overnight DJ too tired to notice he'd said September 17th instead of 16th. But then the details. At approximately 4:47 a.m. this morning, a 18-wheeler jackknifed during a tire blowout, crossing the center divide and colliding head-on with a westbound Dodge pickup. The driver of the pickup, 52-year-old Michael Reynolds of Midland, was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities are warning of lane closures and significant delays. It was detailed, specific, and exactly 12 hours in the future. I kept listening. The station continued its broadcast, weather report for September 17th. high of 94 degrees, clear skies, 15% chance of evening thunderstorms, local news updates, sports scores from games that wouldn't happen for another day. Between the reports, they played music, but the music was strange. Not songs I recognized, but songs that felt familiar, like remixes or alternate versions of popular tracks, vocals slightly different, lyrics changed in subtle ways. At 2:51 a.m., the broadcaster came back. If you're listening to KTXKFM, you've discovered something unusual. Don't adjust your radio. You're hearing correctly. We broadcast 24 hours ahead of real time. Everything we report has not yet happened in your present moment, but has already happened in our temporal position. We see tomorrow. We report tomorrow. We are tomorrow. I almost drove off the road, pulled over onto the shoulder, hazards blinking, staring at my radio display like it might provide some explanation. 97.3 FM. Strong signal. No static. Crystal clear reception of something impossible. The broadcast continued. You may be wondering how this is possible. The short answer is we don't know. KTXKFM has been broadcasting since August 3rd, 2023, from a location in Odessa that exists approximately 23 hours and 57 minutes ahead of Standard Central Time. Our equipment is normal, our building is normal, our staff is normal. But somehow, we are temporarily displaced. We are living tomorrow while you are living today. This had to be a hoax, elaborate performance art, or maybe a creative advertisement, or possibly someone hacking into the FM frequency with a false broadcast. I grabbed my phone, searched for KTXKFM Odessa. Nothing. No website, no FC listing, no mentions anywhere online. The frequency 97.3 in Odessa was officially assigned to a classic rock station, KQRX, which I could still find on the dial 2 clicks away. Playing Sweet Home Alabama, right on schedule, but KTXK kept broadcasting. We understand skepticism. We encourage verification. At approximately 4:47 a.m. on September 17th, your time, about 14 hours from now, check Interstate 20 near mile marker 79. You'll find the accident we just described. The victim's name is Michael Reynolds. Dodge pickup, Texas plates, registered in Midland. And you'll know we're telling the truth. You'll know tomorrow is something you can hear before it arrives. I made a note. Michael Reynolds, I-20, mile marker 79, 4:47 a.m. If this happened, if the accident occurred exactly as described, then either this was the most elaborate setup imaginable or something impossible was occurring. Something that violated causality, violated physics, violated everything I understood about how time worked. I kept listening as I resumed driving. The station reported more tomorrow news. Stock market movements, specific numbers, specific companies. Lottery numbers for the Texas Daily 4, 3719. The score of tomorrow night's football game between two high schools in Midland, 28-24. Panthers winning in overtime. Details that could be verified. Details that would prove or disprove the impossible claim. At 3:43 a.m., the broadcast changed. The professional broadcaster voice became strained, urgent. We need to warn you about something, about a pattern we've noticed. KTXKFM doesn't just broadcast tomorrow's news. We broadcast tomorrow's deaths. Specifically, we broadcast the deaths of people who discover our station. There's a correlation. 100% correlation. Everyone who's listened to KTXKFM for more than 30 minutes has appeared in our death reports within 72 hours. My hand moved toward the radio dial, but I didn't turn it off because I had to know, had to understand whether this was real. Don't turn us off yet, the voice continued, like he could see me hesitating. You need to hear this, need to understand what's happening. We've been keeping records, detailed records. In the 44 days since KTXKFM started broadcasting, 93 people have found our frequency. 93 people have listened for extended periods. And 93 people have died within the following 3 days. Car accidents, mostly, but also heart attacks, falls, sudden medical emergencies, natural-seeming deaths. But the timing is always the same. They listen, then they die, then we report their deaths, and new listeners hear those reports and become the next victims. I should have turned it off, should have switched to any other station, shut off the radio entirely, done anything except keep listening. But the voice had me hooked. You're wondering why we keep broadcasting if we know what happens. The answer is simple. We can't stop. The equipment runs continuously. If we shut down the transmitter, it restarts on its own. If we leave the building, we're compelled to return. We're trapped here, living 24 hours ahead, watching tomorrow's deaths, reporting them, and knowing that our reports create new listeners who become new victims. We're caught in a loop, a temporal loop that feeds on attention and kills whoever pays too much. The voice broke, emotion bleeding through the professional broadcaster facade. My name is Richard Donovan. I was a morning show host for a real station, KPET in Odessa. On August 3rd, I came to work at 6 a.m. and found my equipment behaving strangely. Timestamps showing August 4th, news feeds showing tomorrow's information. I thought it was a computer glitch, but it wasn't. I'd slipped forward. The station had slipped forward. And now I'm here, watching September 17th unfold while you're still in September 16th, and I'm reporting my own death that happens tomorrow evening at 7:32 p.m. from a brain aneurysm, even though I'm perfectly healthy right now. I pulled over again. My hands were shaking. This was insane, impossible. But something in Richard Donovan's voice sounded genuine, terrified, desperate. You've been listening for 34 minutes now, Richard continued. That means you're in the system. You're registered. You're scheduled. Sometime in the next 72 hours, something will happen to you. An accident, a medical event, something that will appear natural but isn't. The station will kill you, and I'll report it, and someone else will hear that report and become the next victim. That's how it works. That's how it's worked for 93 people before you. He paused. I could hear him breathing, could hear the subtle hum of broadcast equipment in the background. Then, there's only one way to break the cycle, only one way we found to escape. You have to do something different, something unexpected, something that changes tomorrow enough that the broadcast becomes inaccurate. Because if the station reports your death wrong time, wrong location, wrong method, the loop breaks, the prediction fails, and failed predictions have no power. How? I asked aloud, even though he couldn't hear me, even though this was a broadcast, not a conversation. How do I change tomorrow? Like he'd anticipated the question, Richard answered. Do the opposite of what you'd normally do. If you plan to go to work tomorrow, don't. If you plan to stay home, leave. Avoid the places you usually go. Avoid the people you usually see. Be unpredictable. Be random. Be anything except the version of yourself that we're watching in tomorrow's timeline. Because the station is observing one specific tomorrow, the most probable tomorrow. But probability isn't destiny. You can make choices that diverge from probability. You can create a different tomorrow than the one we're watching. The broadcast shifted back to normal programming. Weather update, traffic report, more news from tomorrow. But everything felt different now. Contaminated, each detail was a prediction, and predictions about me specifically might be coming. At 4:37 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Don't go home. Oh, it was Richard Donovan's voice. Same voice from the radio, but this was a phone call, direct and immediate. You were going to go home, sleep until noon, then drive to Midland for a job interview at 2 p.m. During that drive, you'd be on Interstate 20. Mile marker 83. At 2:47 p.m. tomorrow, your right front tire would blow out. You'd overcorrect. You'd cross the median. You'd collide with an eastbound SUV. You'd die instantly, along with the SUV's driver and 2 passengers. That's tomorrow for you. That's what I'm watching happen. But you can change it. How are you calling me? How did you get my number? I don't know. The station knows. The temporal displacement gives it access to information it shouldn't have. It knows everyone who listens, knows their names, their locations, their futures. I'm just the messenger, the voice it uses to deliver information. But I'm also trying to save you, trying to save anyone I can. So listen, don't go home. Drive to El Paso instead. Stay in a hotel. Skip the interview. Spend tomorrow somewhere completely different than where probability says you'll be. What if I turn off the radio right now? What if I forget about this? Too late. You listened for 41 minutes. You're in the system now. The only way out is through. Change tomorrow. Survive the next 72 hours without matching any death report I broadcast. Then you'll be free. Then the correlation breaks. Then the station loses its hold on you. He hung up. The radio continued its broadcast, now reporting on local business closures and school district updates, mundane tomorrow information that felt sinister because it confirmed the impossible. This station was genuinely broadcasting from tomorrow, genuinely seeing the future, genuinely reporting deaths before they occurred. I drove to El Paso, didn't go home, didn't sleep, just drove west through the pre-dawn darkness, putting distance between myself and every place I was supposed to be tomorrow. I checked into a motel at 7:43 a.m. using cash, no credit card, no paper trail. Spent September 17th, 2023, hiding in a room in a city I'd never planned to visit, monitoring KTXQ-FM while Richard Donovan reported the news from September 18th. At 2:47 p.m., I heard it. Fatal multi-vehicle collision on Interstate 20 near mile marker 83. A tire blowout caused a pickup truck to cross the median, colliding with an eastbound SUV. 4 dead, including the pickup's driver, who has not yet been identified pending family notification. I was supposed to be that driver. Would have been, if I'd followed my plan, if I'd gone home, if I'd driven to that interview. The prediction had been accurate. Except I wasn't there. I'd change tomorrow by choosing differently. My phone rang again. Richard. You did it. You survived. The death report didn't match. You're not the pickup driver because you're not on I-20. The correlation is broken. You're free now. You can stop listening. You can forget about KTXK-FM. You're one of only 7 people who've escaped. What happens to the station? To you? We keep broadcasting. Keep watching tomorrow. Keep reporting deaths. It doesn't end for us. We're stuck here, 24 hours ahead, living the same loop, warning people who probably won't believe us or won't change enough to survive. But at least you got out. At least I saved one more person. What about the accident? Who died if it wasn't me? Silence. Long, terrible silence. Then someone else was there. Someone else blew a tire at that exact spot at that exact time. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there, who changed their plans, who was being unpredictable and random and accidentally stepped into the death that was meant for you. That's how it works. The deaths have to happen. The timeline requires them. If the original victim escapes, the death finds a substitute. Someone else always pays the price. I felt sick. I killed someone. By not being there, I killed whoever took my place. No, the station killed them. The temporal loop killed them. You just survived. Don't feel guilty for that. Feel lucky. Feel motivated to warn others. Tell people about KTXK-FM. Tell them not to listen. Tell them to change their plans if they do hear it. The more people who know, the fewer victims the station can claim. But here's the problem. Who believes stories about time-displaced radio stations? Who takes seriously warnings about broadcasts from tomorrow? I tried. Posted online. Told friends. Contacted researchers. Everyone thought I was crazy or lying or misinterpreting some elaborate hoax. And I couldn't prove it. Because the proof required listening to KTX KFM for extended periods, required becoming a victim, required entering the system that kills 93% of people who discover it. The only evidence was survival, and survival looked like coincidence, looked like I just happened to change plans on the same day a random accident occurred. So I'm writing this, documenting it, warning anyone who might scan through radio frequencies in West Texas and find 97.3 FM showing stronger signal than it should. If you hear KTCKFM, if you hear news from tomorrow, if you hear Richard Donovan reporting deaths before they happen, turn it off. Immediately. Don't listen longer than a few minutes. And if you do listen too long, change everything. Change your plans, your location, your routine. Be unpredictable for 72 hours. Survive long enough for the correlation to break. Because the station is still broadcasting. Still watching tomorrow. Still reporting deaths. Richard calls me sometimes, warns me when he sees something dangerous in my future, helps me navigate probability. But he's trapped there, living September 19th while the rest of us live September 18th, living September 20th while we live September 19th, forever one day ahead. Forever watching, forever reporting. And the deaths keep happening. Every week, someone new finds the frequency. Someone new listens too long. Someone new appears in tomorrow's death reports and then dies right on schedule. CR. Maintaining the 100% correlation that gives the station its power. Last week, Richard called to warn me about something new. The station is spreading. Other frequencies in other cities are starting to show the same temporal displacement. 99.1 FM in Amarillo, broadcasting from tomorrow. 103.7 in Lubbock, reporting future news. The phenomenon is growing, metastasizing across Texas like a cancer in the radio spectrum. It's feeding on the deaths, Richard explained. Every person who dies after listening gives it energy, gives it power, allows it to expand into new frequencies, new cities, new territories. At this rate, within a year, the entire FM band in Texas will be broadcasting from tomorrow. And then it'll spread beyond state borders. Eventually, radio stations across the country will slip forward, all of them reporting tomorrow's deaths, all of them creating new victims, all of them feeding the loop. What's causing it? What started this? We don't know, but I have a theory. You know about the experiments in Permian Basin? The fracking, the waste injection wells, the manipulation of geological structures. Some of those operations drilled deep, really deep, deeper than the oil deposits, and they found things down there. Anomalies, places where physics behaves strangely, places where time doesn't flow consistently. I think someone drilled into a temporal anomaly. I think they cracked something open that should have stayed sealed, and now it's leaking. Time is leaking. The future is bleeding backward into the present through cracks in reality that we created by digging too deep. If he's right, if this is growing, if it can't be stopped, then eventually everyone will hear tomorrow before it arrives. Everyone will know the future. And knowing the future kills people, because the act of hearing predictions makes them come true unless you fight against probability with every decision. I don't know if I can warn enough people. Don't know if anyone will believe me. But I'm trying. Because Richard Donovan is still broadcasting, still watching my tomorrows, still reporting the deaths of people who make the mistake of listening too long. And the most terrifying part? 2 days ago, Richard called with a new warning. I've been scanning ahead, watching tomorrows further out than usual, seeing weeks ahead, months ahead, and I found something. Found the day when you stop listening to my warnings. Found the day when you get comfortable, when you forget to be unpredictable, when you slip back into routine. It's March 2nd, 2025. That's when you die. That's when you finally match one of my death reports. Car accident, similar to the one you avoided before. I'll report it 6 months from now. And unless you change something massive, unless you do something radical, it'll come true. He gave me the details. Location, time, method, everything about my scheduled death 6 months in the future. And now I'm living with that knowledge, knowing exactly when and where and how I'll die, unless I can be unpredictable enough, random enough, different enough to break the correlation one more time. I'm trying. God, I'm trying. But how do you be unpredictable for 6 months straight? How do you avoid every pattern, every routine, every habit? How do you live without becoming the person that tomorrow expects you to be? If you're reading this after March 2nd, 2025, you'll know whether I succeeded. You'll know whether I survived my scheduled death or became another statistic, another victim, another confirmation that KTXKFM's predictions always come true. And if you ever hear a radio station broadcasting tomorrow's news, remember, turn it off. Don't listen. Don't let curiosity win. Because tomorrow is coming, whether you hear it or not. But hearing it makes it inevitable. Hearing it makes you part of the loop. The station is still out there, still broadcasting, still watching, still reporting deaths before they happen. Tune carefully. Some frequencies show you tomorrow, and tomorrow is always fatal. This is Richard Donovan, KTXKFM, broadcasting from the future, reporting the deaths that haven't happened yet. Trapped in tomorrow, while you still have today. Change your plans. Be unpredictable. Survive. Because I'm watching, and I'm seeing your death approach, and unless you do something different, unless you become someone else, my prediction will come true. Just like it always does. Just like it always will. 97.3 FM. Don't listen. Don't let tomorrow hear you listening. Because once it knows you're there, once you're in the system, death becomes a broadcast you can't turn off.